When you hear the word Sparta, what comes to mind? Probably unbreakable discipline, right? The ultimate warrior society, a picture of perfect order. But here's the thing, that legendary order was built on a really brutal secret, the complete subjugation of the Helots, a huge population of state-owned serfs who did pretty much all the work. And to keep that control, Sparta used something way more terrifying than its famous army.
You see, the final test for a young Spartan warrior, the thing that proved he was truly ready, didn't happen on some sun-drenched battlefield, clashing shields with an enemy army. No, it took place in the shadows of his very own home.
An enemy who farmed his land, who served his food, and who, by the way, outnumbered him something like 7-1. This was the world of the Krypteia, Sparta's secret institution. The name itself literally means the hidden thing.
So what exactly was it? Was it just a brutal coming-of-age ritual? Maybe an elite training program for their best and brightest? Or was it something much, much darker? A state-sanctioned death squad, designed to keep its own people terrified into submission? To even begin to find the answer, we have to dig through these scattered and honestly pretty contradictory accounts from ancient writers. It seems like even they had a hard time wrapping their heads around this secret practice.
Okay, so check this out. On one side, you've got the famous philosopher Plato. He describes the Krypteia as basically an extreme survival course. You know, going barefoot in winter, sleeping on the hard ground, learning to fend for yourself. It sounds tough for sure, but he never mentions killing. Then, you fast forward a few centuries, and this historian Plutarch gives us this absolutely chilling version. He says the smartest kids were sent out into the countryside with daggers, specifically to hunt and murder any Helot they could find in the dark. And here it is. This is the one detail that changes everything. Plutarch, and he's citing the much earlier work of Aristotle here, he reveals the legal trick they used. Every year, Sparta's top officials, the ephors, would literally declare war on the Helot population. So in their minds, this wasn't murder. It was an official act of war.
This just shows you the cold, calculated logic of the Spartan state, doesn't it? This whole declaration of war was basically a legal loophole. It gave their young warriors a green light to kill Helots without facing any kind of religious or legal punishment. It turned state-sponsored terror into just another civic duty.
So, with these conflicting stories, how do modern historians and anthropologists even start to make sense of it all? How do they try to solve this ancient puzzle and figure out if it was a survival test, a death squad, or something else?
Well, it pretty much boils down to three main theories. The first is that it was a holdover, an ancient initiation rite. The second sees it as a practical form of secret military training. And the third argues its main goal was exactly what Plutarch said, a brutal way to keep the Helot living in constant fear.
But there's a more recent theory that's really compelling. It suggests this wasn't just about random acts of terror. It was actually a highly specialized kind of warfare, one that was the total opposite of how Spartans normally fought.
I mean, just look at this comparison. It's night and day, literally. Your classic Spartan hoplite is like a walking tank, heavy armor, long spear, fighting in a tight formation on flat ground during the day. The Krypteia member? The complete opposite. No armor, just a dagger, moving alone or in a small group using stealth and ambush tactics, in the mountains at night. They were perfectly suited for the rugged Greek terrain in a way the main army just wasn't.
So, by any modern definition, the Krypteia was basically an ancient guerrilla force. It was how a small ruling class could use terror, speed, and surprise to control a massive, potentially rebellious population. And they weren't just killing at random. They were targeting Helots who stood out for their strength and leadership qualities, getting rid of troublemakers before they could become a real problem.
So which theory is the right one? The initiation? The training? The death squad? Well, the most likely answer is they're all kind of right. The Krypteia wasn't just one thing. It was an institution that changed over time, its purpose twisting as Spartan society itself began to change. It probably started as a pretty standard initiation ritual, a test of survival you see in lots of warrior cultures. Then, it became a more formal part of elite training. But the real change happened in the 4th century BC. As Sparta's population of citizens started to shrink and their power weakened, their paranoia about the Helots just went through the roof. And that's when the Krypteia seems to have degenerated from a test of character into an instrument of pure terror. And this deep-seated fear, it was like the poison at the very core of the Spartan state.
The constant threat of a massive slave revolt, like the one that almost destroyed them in 464 BC, meant that Sparta was always fighting a secret, undeclared war against its own workforce. The Krypteia was just that war brought out into the open, or, well, into the shadows.
So, in the end, the Krypteia tells a story of a dark transformation. An institution that was maybe once designed to build virtue in young men was twisted into a machine for dominating the oppressed. It just goes to show how easily ideals like strength and discipline can curdle into pure cruelty when they're fueled by fear.
And that leaves us with a final, really unsettling question. We remember Sparta for creating the perfect warrior. But the story of the Krypteia forces us to ask, what's the real cost of that kind of perfection? And what happens to a society when its greatest strength is also the source of its deepest, most terrifying fear?